Hello, I'm Alex.
I'm James.
And I'm Dan.
We're the Ragamuffins, and this is the Ragamuffin Music Podcast, episode 34. It's a place for us to talk about the music we love. I threw myself off because I just said it in a completely different way that time.
You did.
And that really distracted myself.
34 episodes in and you're changing it all.
Switching it up now, yep.
34 is the magic number.
Welcome.
Number.
Said all 34-year-olds.
It's where we talk about the latest news, music and trends in alternative music.
This month, we are reviewing brand new albums from Blink-182 and Beartooth, as well as singles from Bring Me the Horizon, Spirit Box and Tala.
And later on, we'll be discussing whether the concept of albums is dying out.
But first, some news.
Breaking news. We can call bingo straight away.
Bingo!
Mike Portnoy is back in Dream Theater. After a number of years, I can't remember.
How?
What did you say?
That's funny.
Well, I've got a full house now. We've had that many Mike Portnoy mentions.
Oh, it's true, probably.
I've filled out my card.
That's it. You've won. You've won Mike Portnoy.
What do I win?
Dream Theater reuniting.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
They are recording their first album since Black Clouds and Silver Linings in 2009 with Portnoy. There's a whole statement out. This is breaking news today. Alex sent it to me immediately. And I think both of us, potentially, maybe him a little bit of a swaying, would go and see them on tour.
At a festival, 100%.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I think if the tour is reasonably priced and reasonably located,
Yeah.
then I'd probably go.
If all of these specific things happen, then
And
I will
they
go.
play in my back garden, I'll be there, probably.
If they play The Spirit Carries On, you'll be there?
For sure.
They've done a whole statement. They've thanked Mike Mangini, and he's said his own words in there about how he was just holding a place, really, essentially, because I think we all thought this was coming after Portnoy and Petrucci started playing together again, especially with Portnoy drumming on the album, and kind of just bit by bit, they were all kind of meeting up, and I think James LeBrie was probably the last factor involved in this, and here we are, Dream Theater are back.
This is a niche one for all two Dream Theater fans that listen to our podcast. But let us know in the comments who you wanted to...
And all two Dream Theater fans
In
that are on
the
the
room.
podcast.
on the podcast. Let us know in the comments who you wanted to win the Dream Theater auditions back in the day, because I wanted Thomas Lang to win.
Marco Miniman.
I knew you were going to say
Yeah,
that.
straight away.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, you don't. But with Dream Theater's back down and we're happy.
Dream Theater's back.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you very much. In other news, the long-awaited collaboration between Korn and Adidas is now on sale as of October 27th. The collection includes t-shirts, a hoodie, tracksuit, and 2 pairs of shoes. All of these pieces have some kind of Korn logo on. Ever since Korn released the song Adidas back in 1996, I feel like this was kind of coming eventually. And
Plus
here we are.
that was their style as well.
Yeah.
Like tracksuits and that.
So it's almost like full circle in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, need to own some. Need to get something from it, I think.
The shoes are pretty cool, to be fair.
Former Slipknot vocalist Anders Kosefny has been on tour playing the band's demo album, Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat, in its entirety in Australia and New Zealand. Videos have surfaced of some of these performances, which give a glimpse into the origins of the legendary band before the lineup changes to what we know today, really.
You missed the chance there to say videos have been surfacing.
Oh, shit. You got me there, Dan. You got me there.
Brilliant.
We'll cut that, and you can just
You can
say
insert that
it
in.
now, and we can just put it in.
Videos have been surfacing for some of their performances, which give a glimpse into the origins of the legendary band.
That's better.
And, yeah, incredible stuff, to be fair. Yet to be known if there are going to be any other dates, apart from these ones in Australasia, but who knows? Anything can happen. Finally, a new Guitar Hero game has been hinted at during a recent meeting with game developers Activision Blizzard, who were recently acquired by Microsoft. Activision CEO Bobby Kotick said the re-emergence of Guitar Hero and other things would not be possible without the different types of resources. And so, just the endless possibilities for the future that are just incredibly exciting. The possibility of VR technology being involved was also mentioned, and let's hope we hear more news of this soon.
So, Guitar Hero VR, so you can get booed off stage and have it feel real and have it completely crush your self-esteem.
Like it wasn't devastating
Excellent.
enough.
On the flip side, the cheers in VR that you could get if you nail something.
I think you have too much faith in my Guitar Hero abilities, James.
Well, there may be something coming to the channel soon, so maybe we'll get to see this in person.
And you can see me crash out on medium difficulty.
It's been maybe, at least 10 years?
Maybe even more.
Should we all maybe say one song from the last 10 years that we think would be a really cool addition to the game?
That's good.
Doomsday.
That's a good shout.
There's so many to choose from.
I would pick maybe one of like a relatively new While She Sleeps song where Sean's doing like really some fucky like
Some of the whammy stuff.
whammy stuff.
Yeah.
You All You Need?
Yeah, that'd be really sick. Yeah.
I don't know. I could choose literally every song. Or
Yeah,
any
I could
song.
ponder that for quite some time.
Maybe that's a discussion topic. We choose our Guitar Hero set list.
And pop it down in the comments below. What would you
idea.
like to see on
In fact, yeah, fuck the album thing. We're gonna do Guitar Hero. Gonna do Guitar Hero set list today. No, we're not. Next time. If it's something you want to see, then let us know.
And that's the news.
That's the news. Should we talk about some previous album recommendations?
Yeah.
I'd love to do that. Can't remember what I recommended though.
James, what did you recommend?
I recommended Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park. Just a fucking banger.
Shrug
surely.
there for the
Yeah,
audio
there's
listeners.
not really much to say, is
Yeah.
there?
Just a nice chance to revisit a classic album, I think, really, wouldn't it?
It is a classic, although to put because none of us can really criticise it, but
No.
it has aged a little. Like,
Yeah.
it's very nostalgia driven. Like, if those songs were released by a band today, you'd be like, all right.
It's very much a
it's
glimpse
fine.
into that early 2000s.
But for what it was there, to be like, not necessarily the first to do it, but to be nailing that style,
Mm.
excellent.
Mhm.
I think listening to this album, I mean, it's one of my personal all-time favourite albums anyway. But you like, there are so many big singles, right, that you just forget like how good all the deep cuts are as well. Like,
All the deep cuts could easily be singles.
yeah,
They hold their own.
that exactly. Flawless album. Love it.
Alex, what did you recommend?
I recommended 27 Miles Underwater by Higher Power.
Yeah, I know.
Been obsessed. you know, you were there. Been obsessed with them since we saw them at Burn It Down, really. And then got obsessed with the album, so I thought I'd recommend it.
I think this is another one of those albums where you've got to like listen to it a few times, but also you've got to see it live to get it.
Yeah.
As
'Cause-
Turnstile once said.
And maybe you've got to see them live a couple of times to get it. But once you get it, my boy, do you get it?
Yeah, I think I've seen them live like 4 times now. And it was the 4th time where it all just clicked for me. And I was like, sick as fuck. And then, yeah, once it like clicks with your brain, for me at least, it's then just like album on loop.
Yeah, and it's another one of those albums where like each song could have been a single.
Yeah.
Like they've all got something about them. Like hooks for days. Just so much fun.
Yeah, and I think it's quite it's reflective of what like a lot of hardcore does now, where it's not just like there's so many different other like flavors and genres going on. Like there's hardcore and punk, but then there's also kind of like grunge and alternative rock. Kind of conjures up the same sort of feelings to me as like the Military Gun album, in the sense that it's like, I would say like, just if someone asked me what a Higher Power like, I'd say they're a hardcore band, but there's so many more layers to them, I think, which is what makes this album interesting for me.
Personally, I struggled a bit more with it. I just found a lot of it sounded quite the same and not as diverse. And nothing really stood out to me that felt unique. Nothing particularly wrong with it, but it just kind of felt like a bit rinse repeaty.
Crazy.
But again, this has been my first listen through it. Like you say, it's taken you a few times, even seeing them live, to actually understand and get it. So maybe I'm just like 5, 7, 8 steps behind you.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I can't count apparently. There's 6 as well in there.
You so nearly did 5, 6, 7, 8
Yeah,
steps.
I kind of like I could actually have done the whole route there. 5, 6, 7, 8.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm not there quite yet. I do think they were really good at Burn It Down. First time seeing them live, I think, for me, that I can recall. But yeah, I'm not sold.
You'll get there. We'll revisit this every time we see them live.
We shall have a Higher Power update. Dan, what did you recommend?
We can replace the news segment with the higher power update. Does James like
James,
higher
how are
power
you doing
yet?
higher power this month?
We could substitute any band for that.
Yeah.
James, do you like Don Broco yet?
Based on the last song, fuck no.
Does he like him yet?
It's got
That's the
worse
new
after the
segment.
last song. Do I like what?
That'll be the segment. Is does he like him yet?
It could be a throwaway segment that's like we can make a jingle for it, and it's
It's
just
like the next
no.
album is.
You know, on Harry Hill's TV burp, where it'd be like TV highlight of the week, and then it's just like oh, and then just the jingle again. Anyway, where were we? I recommended Origami Angels' Somewhere City.
I found this very musically interesting.
Excellent.
I
I like it when you say
That's
that.
brilliant.
It feels like a band almost a bit for music nerds.
Yeah.
In the way that there's so many kind of jarring changes, you have to kind of be aware of what's happening, I think, a little bit. It's not like your most casual listener could kind of dive in, I think. It's almost like you need to have a bit of knowledge of music in order to go into this.
It's like the Rick and Morty of music.
Oh,
jeez.
God! And now
I
I
don't know how
hate
they
it.
take it. I love how many like different
Except
changes.
the fan base is like normal.
Oh
and nice.
Christ, yeah. I love how many changes in sound and genre there is, just the diversity of it in general. I kind of just want to spend more time delving into this anyway, because I can't really compare it too much to anything else. It's very unique on its own, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. And Alex, you're just
All I
laughing.
can think in my head is I'm Origami Rick. Yeah, loved it. I got into them on the other album that I can't remember the name of.
Gamma Gang?
No,
Or the newer one?
the newer one, I think.
The newer one's good as well.
So it was kind of a bit different for me to, and that unlike just because I'm lazy, I listened to that newer album and not anything else, even though I enjoyed it. So it was like a good excuse for me to just go back and do my homework essentially. And yeah, like you said, it's one of those things. It feels like you're kind of like rewarded for knowing what's going on. Does that make like? Do you know what I mean? Like having a bit
Yeah.
of like you said, it's kind of for music nerds in a way. It's like it's almost like an in joke to like
Yeah.
be in on.
It's
in
like,
a
oh,
sense.
they've used that there,
Yeah.
and they've done this
Yeah.
here.
I really like it, and I enjoyed the glimpse that I saw of them live at Trees this year. I don't think I watched the whole set. I can't remember why, but yeah,
There's
I
a
really,
lot
really
happening.
enjoyed it.
There was a lot happening at
There's a
Trees.
lot going on. Yeah.
And that was our recommendations for the month.
Excellent.
New music?
New music.
So first of all, we've got a brand new song from Tala, Hard Knock. What do you think?
It feels like every time you think you've seen Tala as unhinged as they can be, they just take it a step further.
Another level.
And that's what they've done on this song. It's just... And straight off the bat as well, like straight off, like, from moment one, second one, it's like straight in with just fast-paced music, heavy riffs, some insane vocal work. Yeah, it's just awesome, isn't it?
And I find that, like, despite the chaotic energy, it does still flow as a song. And I find that, like, amongst their discography anyway, that there is such franticness, all over the place kind of feeling of, like, you're pulled in every direction. Yet it's not jarring. It doesn't take you out of the song. You're kind of just intrigued, and you kind of get pulled along for this mad journey that you're on, which, again, very unique, and not many bands can do something like that.
I've got nothing to add. You've both hit the nail on the head.
Sick. I mean, this came out of nowhere.
My only like
Gripe?
no, it's not even a gripe. My only reservation is that like because Max Portnoy is now playing in Code Orange, is it makes me like almost concerned how much time and attention Tala can get now, because I felt like with Metriphagy, that was like an insanely hot start. Like they really hit the ground running with that album, and it felt like, from my perspective at least, like their momentum was a little bit stunted. Partly by the pandemic, and partly by then like that second album for me as well was also a little bit of a step back, which makes sense because they said in like an interview that they wrote
That was
what was that album called?
Generation
before
Danger.
Yeah.
They wrote that one before Metriphagy, which like I think is
Telling?
telling when you listen to it. So I really really love this band, and like they do stuff musically that's ridiculous.
I think also, like from our side in particular, we haven't had the chance to see them.
Yeah,
They haven't toured internationally as much. They've
and that's
pretty
my
much stayed
point.
in the
Is
States.
like
Yeah, they need to get that momentum going and get that fan base first.
'Cause there is the
And
fan
then-
base
and
around.
then a promoter will give them a chance.
Mm.
They have played in the UK before, but it was before we were properly aware of them, really. So
I think it was before Madrifty released as
I
well.
think you're right.
So we're very much owed it. And I mean, as soon as they announce UK tour, I'm snapping up tickets immediately because that show would be incredible.
Or any festival that books them will be there.
I beg, please.
they'd be a really good fit for Dogtooth at Download.
Mm-hmm.
Really good fit.
Agreed. On to the next. We've got Dark Side by Bring Me the Horizon.
See, first time I listened to this through, I was a bit like, oh, is that it? That's the song? But that's because of how kind of crazy and innovative I think Bring Me the Horizon have been recently. Every song they've released, it's done something a bit new, something a bit weird. Whereas this is kind of not quite stripped back, but it's almost like a bare bones, just a simpler song by their standards. But
Almost
Like-
safe in a way. And
Yeah.
I don't mean that as a criticism.
no, exactly.
Almost like it's a comfortable.
That's what I mean. The
predictability in a way.
first listen, it's a bit like, oh, okay, well that's that. And then the more I've listened to it, the more I've kind of got comfortable with it and been like, no, this is just a solid, simple but solid song.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. It's weird because I find that like post-human survival horror got me back into them. The singles released this year with Lost and Amen haven't really got me, but I think this is my favourite out of these newer releases. And it does show that the simplicity can work. You don't need to overthink things sometimes. It does feel a little bit overly produced at times. I
get
feel like
that.
there's a bit too much kind of like compressing it inwards, and like it doesn't have as much of a raw sound as I kind of maybe expect from a Bring Me the Horizon, where even if they're going everywhere, like it's like Ollie's vocals have been tamed.
It felt like in that last chorus, that's really when it should have gone.
Opened up,
over
really, yeah.
100%, and it felt like it just hit like 99.
I mean, you mentioned the chorus, and I do find that a lot of the Bring Me songs, whether I've liked them recently or not as well, do have catchy hook choruses. So they can write songs. There is no doubt that this band can really write songs that stick in your head. I just feel like maybe I enjoyed post-human survival horror so much that now I'm a bit more reserved about Next Gen, which we still don't know when that's being released after the delay. But this is a better step in the direction, personally, for me, compared to some of the more recent singles.
Do we know if Strangers and Die For You are going to be on Next Gen? Because they're written in the same lowercase, uppercase
Potentially.
style as all of the other Next Gen singles, like Amen and
I can't remember if they released a track
track
list.
listing or not. Maybe not.
So I can actually say,
I think if that is the case, if Die For You and Strangers are added in, with what else have we had? Lost,
Amen, and now Dark Side.
Nice. That's a really
That's 5 tracks already.
That is a really, really interesting mix. And
It's very eclectic.
Survival Horror was only like 8 songs?
8, 9 songs.
But I wonder if I mean, I feel like the original plan of 4 post-human EPs is obviously way out the window.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be like 4 mini albums now, like 8
Yeah.
to 9 songs a piece. But that is just me purely speculating.
And we'll talk more about mini albums and EPs
I
later.
think also as well, like Lost, for example, was a song that I hated, and then they played it at Download, and it clicked, and I was like, oh, this
Makes
is a
sense.
song to be in a crowd for.
Yeah.
And I think like I don't know what my point was going to be there. I don't know, just that there's been a weird like inconsistency, despite them being like one of the best bands alive at the moment.
a quick Google search suggests there's no official track list yet, but allegedly there's 8 tracks. And on Genius.com, we already have 5 of them in Amen, Strangers, Die For You, Lost, and Dark Side.
Okay.
Interesting.
3 more.
Fucking hurry up then.
Do we think,
Christ.
just prediction time, do we think by the end of the year it's out?
No, I
it's
think
not
January.
till next year now.
Is it next year?
Yeah, at least.
When's the tour? January?
I think so.
I think wishful thinking that we get it just before the tour, because it would feel like bit of a shame for that tour to happen, and then it comes out in like February. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
We shall see.
fingers and toes crossed. January release.
Next up, the last single, we've got Cellar Door by Spirit Box. Alex, you pulled a face.
I might be completely alone in this, so listen, shoot me down in the comments if you disagree. I think everything they've done since Eternal Blue, which by my opinion is like a really innovative metalcore album, has been everything since has been pretty standard. I've not felt like what was the EP? Like the Red EP?
Rotoscope.
That completely glossed over me. I
hold you there.
I didn't really connect with that.
I agree.
This one
But-
and this one and
But is there a but?
what was this one
coming?
called? Cellar Door.
Cellar Door.
This one and Jaded, the same. I just felt like there's nothing that's been like crazy to me.
I agree. I think like the standout for this one in particular was Courtney's vocals were fantastic. But
Always
like
are though.
that, we know that's happening. This just doesn't. I don't know how else to describe it. It doesn't feel like a song. Like I can't like kind of delve into it and kind of.
I can't find the vibe.
I can't find the hooks and
Yeah.
what's pulling me into it. It's there's all kinds of things here, like you say with Eternal Blue, like great album, and you say innovative. There's so much more flow to it, whereas everything since I don't know like that it hasn't appealed to me. I think there's so much more better metalcore that's been released since then, like from like when we've started having these singles.
Yeah.
That yes, Eternal Blue blew them up, and we saw like Download, that tent was fucking packed, and they're packing out crowds and good. They've kind of launched themselves, and for the most part, fantastic. But I agree, I didn't enjoy Rotoscope as much, and I'm still not finding anything that I'm really kind of enjoying as much as I did when Eternal Blue tunes came out.
And it might be, and like I'm trying to be like fair. That might also just be that because Eternal Blue was so good, my own personal expectations are really high.
Yeah, like
And
Talent.
that-
I guess they've
and I
made a
could be a bit
deliberate
fickle.
step away from that, haven't they?
Sure.
I think it's like we mentioned when we've talked about bands like Movements and Spanish love songs recently. They're not going to make another Eternal Blue. They're probably not going to make an album. Well, they're not that they're not going to make an album as good as that, but they can't do the same thing and expect it to be the same kind of standard. So I think they consciously have to take a step in a different direction.
Yeah.
But to bring on to Cellar Door, I think this song rips. I love this song. But I don't know if part of that is because of what you guys have mentioned, the kind of almost a sense of relief after the EP and the other singles not being so great and not quite as punchy, to then have this come through and just be heavy as shit with like really great screaming vocals on it.
Yeah.
It could well be that it's just like relief that the other songs weren't that great, or at least for me weren't that great. To then have this one be, I don't know, maybe it's like an illusion that it's not actually as good as I think it is because of how disappointed I've been by the other songs.
Yeah.
But this song in isolation I fucking love.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
The two other things I think are interesting to note, or like the two other things I want to say. Number one is that I do find it interesting, and this will kind of parlay into what our discussion is that Eternal Blue was a fantastic album, and they've followed it with 2 EPs. And I think that is a smart thing to do because it, like, Rotoscope was definitely like its own vibe. And I think that The Fear of Fear will also have its own distinct vibe. And I think that's an interesting, like, I don't want to get too deep into it now, but I think it's just an interesting thought process that I would love to pick their brain on, and why they've decided that EPs now. Because in a lot of ways,
it ties into our discussion that's coming up later, I guess.
I'll get to that in a minute.
And we'll talk about it more next month because it's out then.
And the other thing that is a personal thing for me, and there are some people online, people seem quite divided about it online, and for me personally is, how can you have Josh Gilbert in your band and not have him singing yet?
Come on.
It feels almost like a sin.
The harmonies you can pick between him and Courtney.
It's no discredit to Courtney because she's one of the best vocalists.
But you also have arguably one of the
metalcore.
best clean metalcore vocalists, especially of the 2000s.
And they could complement each other really well. And like, I mean, Josh Gilbert was can I say the name As I Lay Dying?
Yeah, I think so.
Josh Gilbert was a big part of what I loved about As I Lay Dying.
Yeah.
And hearing him singing on those choruses was,
I mean,
insane for me.
Go back
And,
to
like,
stuff like An Ocean Between Us. That chorus, incredible.
And so I feel like a sense of like, well, I'm not going to hear As I Lay Dying again, but I could hear him sing if he just fucking started singing.
I can't remember who. I think it was a band. I remember now. There's a band called Oni, I think, or Oni, Oni, it's spelled. And they had Howard Jones, of obviously ex-Killswitch, and they had Josh Gilbert feature on it. So both of them did like singing features.
Was that the band that Jared Dines did?
Yes,
I can't remember.
I think it is. I think it is.
All I remember is that I heard the song once. I was like, this is really good. Josh's vocals, Howard had a really significant part in it, and Josh has like a bit of a bridge section, so I wanted more. But it did kind of give me that like, I've heard Josh Gilbert vocals again, and like it sounds weird. It's not like, obviously after our love for a previous band that he was in, I want to hear his vocals again because I think they're so good, and that's him singing like "Matter of Time" by Wovenwar is like my favorite song, and I want to hear his vocals, and so I want Spirit Box to use him. And I hope so. I hope so.
It's like having Messi in your team and sticking him at right back. It's like, what? Why?
I mean,
he could play right back.
I mean, it'd still score from there.
Oh yeah, true. Anyway,
album time.
The
wonderful band of Beartooth. Caleb, thank you very much. You released The Surface on my birthday. The Pink era, we're in that now. I'll kick it off.
Queen.
Wow. I listened to it pretty much straight away on the day. And I feel like this is an album. And again, we'll touch on things later when it comes to albums.
It's an album.
It's an album.
He's got an album.
I think it works as a collection of songs best. Like some of the singles, fantastic. Like I love Riptide, Sunshine, Doubt Me Still Anyway. However, I think like as a collective, having this all together, it's a great collection of songs and kind of hearing where Caleb is in this moment. Like for me personally, I think, Dan, you've spoken about Wonder Years in particular, about like connecting with certain albums. Maybe it's a bit later. Alex, I want to say you said about Basement possibly before as well.
It's probably me as well.
Or possibly you as well, and Dan. But
having
those
Amity Affliction.
Amity. But having those albums that like you connect to at a certain point in your life with it, hearing kind of like, I want to kind of bill it maybe positive core from Caleb, maybe. Posicore, there you go.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like with the Beartooth eras, I can kind of relate to each of them as they've come out. And like for me, right now, I don't personally want to say it's their best work, because I don't think it is. However, being able to relate to a band like this and hearing kind of where it's at, I'm kind of also, one, just happy for Caleb, and two, kind of having that connection with it probably brings my enjoyment to a different level compared to someone just kind of here listen to this album for the first time. So almost like a biased approach anyway, but I do really like this album. Like I say, it's not their best, but I think it works as a collection of songs amazingly well. And Kayla's vocals do sound phenomenal in particular, I think, on this. Like every album, it just sounds better and better and better.
Straight away, there's a few, like, he's almost using like new vocal techniques that I've not really heard him use before on a few of these songs. I think he uses like a growl straight away on the opening track, The Surface, which I think was really cool. And again, a great opening track. It kind of, it's full of energy, kind of pulls you in. It does everything you want from an opening track on a metalcore album. But then the first of the problems I have with this album lies straight away in that after The Surface, you've got Riptide, a single that we've heard. It must have come out nearly 2 years ago, right? It's been out for a long time.
I want to say
anyway.
it was last summer.
I
think it was last summer.
And then we've got Doubt Me, which is another single that we've had for a little while, a couple of months, I think. The Better Me, which is a single that came out like right before the album was released. And then Might Love Myself, which is a single which was released quite a while ago.
Yeah, a couple of days before.
Then you'll see the pattern here. Then there's Sunshine, which is
earlier this year.
a single which we've had for a little while now. So it's only when you've got practically 2/3 through the album, well, maybe just over halfway through the album, where you're kind of getting to some of the like newer,
but then you even get
stuff.
to, there was remind me of the name of last song.
I Was Alive.
that came out on release day as well.
Okay, so
it's
so
like
there's
a lot of singles there.
one,
Yeah,
two,
that one I
three,
can
four,
excuse 'cause it's release
5,
day.
6 singles,
It's the same. Like again,
which is happening a lot with a lot of albums.
it was the big critique that we had at the time of the Sleep Token album
Yeah.
was that
We were skipping through.
essentially you start on release day, you start halfway through,
Mm.
and that takes away from the album experience. And I just think if you're like, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, they can choose how they track list it and choose what they want as the singles, but think it through. Just separate him a little bit, because I had the same problem with it. I feel like my critique of this album, in a way, doesn't matter because I think the whole point of it is the positivity. Like we've spent years listening to Caleb be miserable on record,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's almost like, well, regardless of what I think of the music, the fact that this album even exists is like a joyful thing.
Yeah.
For him and for the band and for fans.
Celebration.
But that being said, I think also we can still
Critique it.
not really vibe with it. Like there are things on this album that I don't really fuck with. The song that had Hardy on, what was it called?
The Better May.
Great accent.
Shit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that one.
But you know, still plenty of bangers. Riptide, Sunshine.
I like The Surface. To open up with that straight away, I think was
Yeah.
a really, really strong song.
and also like they're a fantastic live band. So they're at the point now where their set list. This is how many albums have they done now?
Is this
I
4?
want to say this was like 5.
I think this might be 5.
We had first of all EP, but then we had Disgusting, Aggressive, Disease, Below, and now The Surface. So 5.
So all they needed really was anyway like a few songs to add to the set list, which I think this album provides.
Oh, definitely. I think where this album excels is that classic Beartooth formula of a huge chorus, chuck a couple of breakdowns in there, some chuggy riffs, and you've got yourself a Beartooth song. And they've
Some woes maybe.
some woos. We love some woos. But that's kind of a compliment and a critique of this for me. Like, yeah, it's a formula that seems to work. They're enjoyable songs. I think Doubt Me is one of my favourite Beartooth songs.
It's incredible.
Mainly because of that chorus and also because of the positive like message behind it as well that we've mentioned.
And also performance-wise.
But it's almost getting tired now. It's like they've kind of done this formula for so long. It's like, let's mix it up a bit.
I think once we we keep tying things up and saying about it. Once we get into discussion later, they're a band that, album-wise, I'm quite happy with where we're at with albums, and I'd like to see shorter releases in the future now. But we'll
It's almost
teasing.
like
Get
it's
on to
almost
that.
like albums
Come
are
on.
dying out maybe.
Yeah. Spoilers.
And then finally, last album, Blink-182 returned. The classic lineup is back. We have Tom, Travis, and Mark together once more. One more time, some might say. Never necessarily the biggest Blink fan growing up. Always loved songs in particular. But even I can kind of hear, listening back to this, how much of a nostalgia trip it is. And almost, in a way, despite everything that's all happened to each of them, I think, throughout the years, a look at us, we're here, a celebration of everything, and in parts almost as well like a love letter to fans. And I think having that interaction between them, fans who have wanted this kind of thing to happen and have this reunion, you can see at live shows that are just selling out everywhere. And I'm hearing reviews that they're fantastic at the live shows, that having this trio back together properly, it's fantastic to see. And I think this album proves it. It sounds incredible. It feels like you have old Blink-182, but you've brought it into the present time. So it's like what we would have heard anyway if there's a natural transition. And it feels updated. It feels new, despite obviously having things that we're used to hearing from Blink. So I'm all for it. And it's just lovely to see something like this happen, to be honest, especially with all the negativity of things that have happened throughout the years.
Yeah, I've also never really been that much of a Blink fan. Again, I like the hits, but never really delved too much into it. So they've never been a band that meant that much to me. But again, the same as James, listen to this album. They've kind of it's like they've thrown in all the elements that make Blink 182 or Blink 182, whatever they want to be called. What it is.
Today.
Thanks, man. I've been practicing. Yeah, it feels like this album kind of pieces together all the elements that makes that band what it is. It's got the silliness in there on songs like Edging. It's got like the emotional stuff on there on One More Time. And then just some fucking great pop punk songs. Like Bad News for me is just a great fast-paced pop punk song. A bit of like a Neck Deep vibe to that one, which is weird, almost like coming full circle. It's like Blink 182 inspired Neck Deep, and then I'm comparing this brand new Blink 182 song to older Neck Deep. A bit long maybe. And there's some bits they're trying on there that don't quite work out for me, like the kind of where they've tried to add some poppier elements and some kind of effects and things on there. But on the whole, a really, really enjoyable album. I really, really liked it.
Ali,
and they gave me a free T-shirt. But I still believe all of those things.
You both sort of summarised a lot of how I feel about this as well. I think like the main takeaway I had from both of these albums this month was just like joy that we. Sorry, that's my belly. Just like joy that we are experiencing these albums in the way that they are. Like you said, there's so much has happened to this band. The fact that we've even got new music with this original lineup is like a blessing. And again, like there's elements of this album that, like Dan said, there's classic stuff, there's emotional stuff, fun, like everything that makes like a good Blink 182 album. I think this is like maybe it's not as good as like Take Off Your Pants or Enema, but like I think it's a really, really, really good Blink 182 album.
I think to summarise it, it kind of just feels like it's three friends having fun making music again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started.
That's kind of what Blink 182's always been, I guess.
Yeah.
Not always, because Tom left at one point, but you know what I mean.
And I think also as well, like, because obviously there will be people out there who are like younger than us who this might be their very first Blink 182 album. And I think it's actually like, if this is someone's first Blink album, I think it's a very, very good.
It's kind of a definitive one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Agreed.
But also it has like a maturity that like lifelong fans would have grown up into, if that makes sense.
I've seen clips on like TikTok of like old fans listening to it and like feeling like they're thrown back to it and like emotionally but like reacting to it because it's like, Christ, this was my childhood, this is what I grew up with, and we're looking at almost like 20 years later and we're kind of almost back to it and like having that love letter to fans. Like I said, it's the resonating with the older fans is fantastic, and I think this is something that newer people, fans of pop punk nowadays, can be like, oh, I heard this band influenced my favourite band, let me check it out, and they won't be disappointed. Upcoming releases for next month?
Yes, let's hear them.
I'm excited to hear these.
Let's break the fourth wall. James has refused to tell me what one of the upcoming releases is until we record, so
I think it'll be your favourite one.
You'll be hearing our reaction live.
So on November 3rd, Spirit Box are releasing the Fear of Fear EP. On November 3rd as well, Silent Planet are releasing Super Bloom. Dying Wish are back with Symptoms of Survival on November 3rd, a very stacked date. And on November 17th, releasing her 49th album, her first rock album, titled Rockstar. It's Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton, yes.
The realisation on your face, which shows me
that's the 49th album.
That's the album you're most excited for,
I
Alex.
had heard about this, yeah.
Is that, yeah?
I would argue...
I wasn't sure she was still alive.
Yeah, she looks good for her age as well. I would argue, regardless of the genre of music that she's made in the past, that Dolly Parton is already a rock star.
Oh, yeah.
Let's review it.
Was she an inductee into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I believe she is
Yeah.
in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Royalty.
So
49 albums.
49th solo album.
That's fucked. Have a day off, love.
So yeah,
Very good for her. I'm excited for that.
which album most looking forward to?
That one, probably.
Dolly Parton.
I'm quite a big Miley Cyrus fan. And so Dolly Parton is like Miley Cyrus is Mr. Miyagi. If that makes sense. Please tell me that makes sense.
That's getting
that
clipped.
does make sense.
They their voices complement each other really well.
I do want to say, I think,
They've sung
I haven't
quite
looked
a
into
lot.
this in depth. I believe there are like quite a few features on this album from like old rock stars and icons, I think.
Love that.
Like, don't quote me exactly, but people like a Slash in particular, or something like that, like older generation.
Oh.
So,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm excited.
Alex, we know that's your favourite.
I am also very excited for the Dying Wish album.
Yep. But not as excited as Rockstar.
Obviously.
Dan?
Dying Wish for sure. They're a really exciting band. I think they're gonna. But they're already kind of showing signs of blowing up a bit, really. I think they're kind of the next band to break through, sort of following Knocked Loose's footsteps, breaking into the mainstream. Probably go viral on TikTok at some point with this new album, and that'll be it. But also Spirit Box. Intrigued to kind of hear the final completed piece of work.
I'm kind of intrigued by all of them anyway. But I kind of want to delve into this Silent Planet one a little bit, because I've heard so much stuff about them on social media, like Twitter in particular, and I've kind of not. I don't have a reason why I've not listened yet.
They seem like they'd be right up your alley.
I think
as
they
far
would
as I
be.
know.
So I kind of want to have this as my first go properly, not listen to anything until the album comes out, and then really just kind of delve into it and kind of take it in from there. So
People raved about. I think it was called Iridescent.
yeah,
Their previous album.
Yeah.
People raved about that one,
so
but we snoozed on it like a bunch of idiots. So
that's next month coming up.
Go have our beauty sleep. Gig talk.
We went to Mizzoulos Company Fest.
We did.
It was a wonderful time. Lovely,
It was.
brand new festival in Bristol for the one day, just the one day.
Just the one day, actually.
Check out the vlog on the channel now, and we've got a recap podcast on there. Had a wonderful time. Saw incredible bands: Harriet, Graphic Nature, Envision.
We saw a lot of bands.
Lake Malice, Excerts. Help me.
I don't know.
Raptors. I want these.
Raptors, yes.
South Arcade.
Yes. I'm losing
The
track.
Menstrual Cramps.
The Menstrual Cramps.
Come on, Dan. I want
Girl.
even there.
Girl, yes. A lot of good bands.
Did we mention Witch Fever?
No, Witch Fever.
Witch Fever. We saw Witch Fever.
Basically, it was a wonderful day out for a first time festival. We had a fantastic time. It was wonderfully organised.
Love Is Noise. That's another one.
Lovers Noise, yeah.
Lovers Noise. Yeah.
I'm really
It's-
jealous of that one.
It's one of those festivals, again, where you're able to just run around and see so many bands in one day, whether they're bands that you knew before that you want to go and see, or just bands that maybe you've heard about, or bands that you've not heard anything about whatsoever, and you just stumble into the room and check them out. It's such a great way to discover new music and an excuse to kind of see bands that you've been planning to see.
Yeah.
Also, I really love now. I mean, I didn't go, but I do like that festival season now is like well beyond summer. Like our
Yeah.
our
Have an
first
extra
festival
few.
was Takedown, which again
April.
same vibe. Was you could stumble into any room in that.
I mean,
building.
I went to a
It's so
one-day
cool.
festival in Oxford in February last year.
Jeez.
This year, rather. So yeah, festival season starting
It's not just
in
the
the
summer.
in the dead of winter and continuing through to autumn. It's great.
Good stuff. Things we love to see.
Anyway, yeah,
Still-
we covered a lot more of Misery Loves Company in the recap podcast. And if you want to feel like you were there, check out the vlog.
And that was the past
Have
month.
we done anything else? Is that
I
it?
don't think it's been... Because there was so much in the month previous, I think. It feels like we were off, but...
I did see Scout for Girls as well, but
I was at the
let's
snooker.
pass on that.
Alex,
How
how's
was
the
it?
snooker?
Yeah.
Fucking loved it. Well, I went twice.
Didn't see Ronnie O'Sullivan though, did you?
Didn't see Ronnie O'Sullivan. Pulled out for medical reasons, but he was actually on holiday in Spain. Can't be mad. It's Ronnie O'Sullivan. But really enjoyed it. I was front row. I was on the telly a little bit. Waved to the camera.
I still need to see this. I wanted to find me a replay.
Watched Mark Selby win 6 frames to nothing against someone. And I enjoyed it. I love snooker. We'll be going again next year.
Oh, what if it falls on the same weekend as Misery Loves Company again?
Should we discuss things?
Well, just one thing.
Our album's dying out.
Could be. Well,
It's weird.
let's-
We've accidentally touched on this subject,
Yeah.
like in the
I guess
reviews already.
that shows that it is a sort of a constantly relevant thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about it a lot out of recordings, sort of the arguments 2 and 4 albums or EPs or just general things like that. I guess we should start with your perspective, Dan, because you also work in a record store.
I do indeed.
So you maybe
Which
have a different
obviously
insight.
kind of depends on the album format, really, because you can't really, although singles are a thing, in physical form, it's not really worth the money to kind of get them pressed. And obviously, as a consumer, why are you going to go and buy a single for like a tenner when you can just stream it? Like, it's just not going to happen. So I guess from that point of view, albums are important. But also from like a consumer's and listening perspective, because obviously I buy a lot of vinyl as well. There's just something about just sticking an album on in full and just listening to it, whether that's on a physical piece of music or whether you're just streaming it off Spotify or YouTube or whatever. Because there's certain bands as well that are very album driven and will have the track listing will be very thought out.
Even like side A and side B splits.
Even the point where you have to flip the record over, it'll be like the exact right kind of moment to do it. Like there might be an interlude song that kind of goes out into the point you need to flip it over. But yeah, even non-physical, even just if you're just streaming an album, there's so many albums that just work as like a full cohesive piece of art. And that doesn't mean that it's not a thing that's becoming less relevant, but to people that just do it for the art, it's probably, albums are probably the best way to kind of convey whatever message or whatever thing you want to be doing with that piece of music.
I feel a lot of my perspective comes from where's the band at in their career. I feel like maybe just in my head, I feel like a 4/5 albums deep band. I've probably got enough material there, and if you're only at that point going to be putting out big singles that you've played like into live gigs, we don't need another full album. I can appreciate that there's probably a drive to do something creatively within that, but then, not to sound like it's a waste, but then if you can focus in on those maybe 3, 4, 5 songs even more and put all your creative energy into those, I feel like maybe they come out better having all of that creative focus than maybe a 10, 11, 12 song album when you're almost putting it down by a third at that point. When you look at a band like we spoke about Beartooth earlier on, I think Slipknot's a prime example.
Well, even
Avenged Sevenfold at this point, like you're looking at these bands who have long, fantastic, maybe great careers, and yet 1 or 2, maybe 3 songs at a push get played and put into a live set. Great, fantastic new songs that you can put into it, but then what's happening to the rest of the album out of that? And I guess creative output and all that kind of thing, but then from the consumer point of view, I kind of feel like, well, what's the point of listening to those other songs, especially if we're trying to get someone into a new band?
Sure.
And I'm saying, like, Beartooth, for example, let's say Doubt Me, Riptide, Sunshine, and maybe one other song, 4 songs, are going to go into their new tour based on this album we just reviewed. If I turn around and say to someone, hey, this is Beartooth's latest album, give it a listen, and they're like, oh, which ones are they going to play live? Oh, just 4 of them.
Sure.
Are you going to want to go and listen through a whole album? Because as a new fan, you're not going to feel as invested.
Yeah, and then that also ties into like I want to circle back to this because I have another point related to what you just said. But when it gets to things like that, it's easier to just make a playlist of all of Beartooth's absolute best hits and give that to someone new. So it's sort of like the consumer, or the way that we now consume music has changed significantly. But before we
then
get
at
to
that point, sorry, just to stay on that, but then at that point, people aren't consuming an album; they're consuming a playlist.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's something that feels like something that's going to come up in a second. Sticking with the point that James made of it depends where a band's at in their career, I think that's a very valid point. It's like you look back to our chat we had with Harriet, where we said to them that their EP Profound Morality kind of feels like they're testing the waters and kind of figuring out, or like putting together a showcase of kind of what kind of music they can make and what they can do. Obviously, amazing EP, or at least we think so. A lot of other people do as well, clearly. But we've always felt like that sound will lend itself well to an album format.
Yeah.
Which again, my point is, they're a band at that point in their career where they're kind of still figuring things out, figuring out what they're going to do with that first album. So for them, that EP was the right thing to do, but they're now finding that an album is now maybe the right thing, the right next step, if you see what I mean. And again, the sound that they do artistically would work really well in the form of an album.
Yeah.
I think if you just had loads of Harriet singles that you're listening to on shuffle, it wouldn't quite have the same effect as listening to an album in full.
Yeah, it's definitely a band-to-band thing as well, because like Matt from Kubla Khan on the Downbeat, he said that moving forward they were thinking of just doing EPs from now on. And in his own words, it was to literally trim the fat. It was like James said, why would we put our effort into 10 songs when we could just put all our effort into 4 or 5 and make them as flawless as they can be? And I feel like, as a fan as well, you can kind of tell sometimes when an album's got filler or when it's not.
You can, for sure. But then on the other hand, there's also bands that are saying things like, we wrote like 25 songs for this album and we've had to cut out 15 of them.
I
to
immediately
just
get
put
worried
10
when I
on
hear
there.
that kind of thing. I'm immediately worried because I'm thinking like you're stretching yourself too thin. Like, how good are these songs? Like, the likelihood is 25 songs. Fuck. And this is kind of what's making me worried about the last 741 album. Is double albums as well. Like, this gets put out, and I can rarely think of any double albums that are actually good, where both sides land. Because when you've got that much material that you're putting your focus and your energy into, I'm a bit concerned about, like, okay, what's actually going to be like top tier and what I expect of this band that I enjoy.
But then you've got the other factor of, if that band's been away for a little while, then they'll have had time to refine a double album worth of songs. So again, I think it's like a band to band basis kind of thing.
I think to switch to like one big component that sort of is heavily out of artists' control, and I think it's a big determining factor, is like playlisting and like basically Spotify.
I mean,
right? has ruined in a lot of ways has made music insanely accessible. The ability to discover new bands is so easy now, but on the flip side of that, there's like almost a compromise that bands have to make to their art for the sake of what they're doing for playlisting spots. Like Alpha Wolf, for example, they've said before, like, they won't write a song that has like a long fiddly intro because it's not going to get picked up on a playlist. People will skip it. So they, which is fair enough. Like, but in a way, to me, that's like they're robbing themselves of the ability to explore a different type of sound because they're writing with the intent of this song's got to kick off straight away. Which, if that's what they want to do, I'm not critiquing them for that. I think that's like a symptom of a bigger problem.
Is that just the modern day landscape?
Yeah.
I mean, look at TikTok, for example. The reason that app does so well is because you're just swiping through constantly. You're like, and I mean, we're all guilty of it. If a video doesn't catch your attention within the first, not 30 seconds, like 2 seconds, you're like, nope, I'll watch the next one. Or, no, I'll watch the next one. And it's the same with music consumption now. People stick on a playlist, whether it's something that like Spotify have curated themselves, whether it's something a friend sent to them, whether it's something they've put together, and they'll skip through stuff if a song doesn't grab them within the first couple of seconds. It's like, no, next song. So yeah, bands, it will be changing the way that bands are writing music and the way that they're releasing music as well.
And also, it changes the pressure from above. Like, if
labels as well. Be,
you know, and artists have talked about it, that they've had like songs rejected by labels because it's not like catchy enough for TikTok. Do you know what I mean? And that is tragic.
And I think we could get into another discussion at another point about labels in general, because you look at big bands like, for a Slipknot, for example, who have now gone out of their record label and will probably go independent. The accessibility to now put your own album on Spotify anyway, you've worked on independently without having any kind of record company behind you, it's a very different landscape than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago with this anyway. So that's a different story. But
well, I think that kind of parlays in, because you think like in the 80s and 90s, even the 2000s, bands, we have to get a record deal. We have to get signed by a label in order to do this. Whereas now, do you know what I mean? People can make 4 songs in their bedroom, put out as an EP, and start playing shows immediately. So it's almost like the format of like traditional albums and traditional like record label like sort of setups is in a way like becoming redundant to a degree.
When you throw it back to times like that as well, the way we consume music now through mostly Spotify, compared to buying physical albums. I know you work in a record store with a dance, so you maybe have a more like forefront view of it, but you used to go and buy every album you kind of wanted back in the day in particular. Now there's so many people that will stream it, and the royalties and the costs for streaming are so minimal and disgusting. They should not be where they are. It should just be so much better than how it is. I can see a case for bands hopefully wanting to do EPs, to be honest, because you're not going to make money off an album or an EP any different, really, because it's all based on the streaming numbers. Well, so you may as well put that attention creatively into a song that's really good, that maybe will blow up and get you 1 million, 2 million, 10 million streams, where you'll earn better revenue from that, compared to going and maybe pressing a load of albums, vinyls, whatever, that maybe wouldn't sell as well because people are more tempted to go via streaming services.
I think it also parlays into like the biggest like bands of so many bands say it now, the biggest money earner is merchandise, specifically on tour. That the idea for like an up and coming band to hunker away for 6 months to make an album and lose out on all that touring time is like could be like make or break for bands. Whereas if you're only doing singles and EPs, you can be in the studio for 2 weeks, a month, like, and essentially tour almost the year round, and you're constantly, do you know what I mean? Then essentially, as far as like a business decision goes, you're probably making a better judgment for your band by dropping regular rather than like going away for 6 months to make an album. But then the flip side of that is then you get bands that you get sick of seeing. Like, I don't want to name any. I'll name one. Like Static Dress.
I knew you were going to say Static Dress.
We saw them, I personally feel, too many times in a year. And like, yeah, I could have just not gone to their set at Download or not gone to their set at Outbreak. But that's not the point. The point is they were like unavoidable to a degree.
Sorry, I was suppressing a yawn a bit there.
No, that's cool. And also
both helps and hinders a band, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's my point. And also, like, I guess the flip side to my own argument there is there's also an excitement about seeing a band on an album cycle. Like, for example, While She Sleeps, who we've seen on their last 4 album cycles. And every time, like, the excitement for us is like, there's a bunch of new songs added to the set list, and it's interesting to see how that's going to change the dynamic live. And it makes it feel like a sort of like a momentous like returning event, like year on year, or do you know what I mean? Every 2 years, you're seeing that band grow. I get there's not really a point to what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of arguing both sides of that argument.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Because I can see why bands would see it in different ways.
I think before we move on too far from it, I want to raise a counterpoint to James's point about earnings. In that buying physical albums is still a much better way for money to get to a band than streaming is. Yes, there's still a lot of people with kind of their fingers in the pie, like record labels, promoters. Obviously, the record store takes a small cut as well. But that money still physically goes to the band in some form or another. Streaming, they do get some earnings from it, but you've got to get a hell of a lot of streams to be able to see like a decent turnover from it. Like you've got to be like almost like Adele levels to like be able to live off the streaming money. So yeah, I think in my opinion, like almost as a summary, streaming's great to kind of as like a marketing tool to kind of get your name out there as a band.
Sure.
Like get into playlists, get into like featured stuff all the time, turn up in like the algorithm and things. I've discovered so many bands from like the Spotify radio feature.
Yeah.
But in terms of earning money, the streaming just isn't really a viable thing for the majority of artists. There's not loads of money in physical copies either. Like Alex said, the money really is in touring and in merch. But back to the album kind of thing. In terms of streaming versus physical copies do earn better. And obviously, like I said, bands aren't releasing singles in a physical form because it's just not viable.
And I guess like as well, if you were a band who, let's say for example, over the course of a year, well, like of Mice and Men for example, right, when they did that album that was split up into like 3 EPs.
Okay.
We talked about them all year. We listened to pretty much every song from that album, and then at the end of the year, we had a full album. I felt like positives and negatives to that in the sense that, well, if they're going to release like a vinyl, they might as well put 3 EPs together. But then
they did.
The enjoyment of listening to an album on release day was hindered because it was like, well, I'm just listening.
Yeah,
but maybe that's more than from the like Dan saying there, people don't release singles on CD or vinyl. That's more like the album releaser. That's like the fan that wants to get those. You can tell by that they're not focused on revenue from streaming. You know that.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like, do you think it would be viable for a band to drop 10 singles in throughout a year and then at the end of the year just put them all on?
I would rather have that.
I was going to say Sleep Token with Sundowning. Are you not aware of the release
every
kind of
2 weeks,
schedule?
wasn't it?
Sundowning?
Yeah. But I think it was every 2 weeks or something. From I can't remember the dates, but from like February through to September, they released a single like every 2 or 3 weeks at the exact time the sunset.
Oh yeah,
at Sundowning. So yeah, there'd just be one every couple of weeks. Obviously, it kind of gives you the time to take in each song, kind of thing. And then at the end of it, they're like, "There's your album. It'll be released.
Interesting.
It'll be released physically on this date, but for now, you've got it."
And for like
what you said,
downloadable
do you think that
form.
could be a model that
I think
could work long term for
I think
bands?
Again, it depends on the band. You've probably got to have built up some kind of following at some point before you commit to doing that. But again, Sleep Token is so unique in the way that they market themselves as well. Like they almost did a similar thing with the new album because they released so many singles before the album came out, and they seem to just be coming out randomly. And I mean, we were there for it. Everyone was just losing their shit every time they released a song. And it kind of helps them blow up, I guess. Not just from being great musicians and a great band, but from that kind of marketing strategy as well.
To bring it back to what you said about Of Mice and Men, a band that, in theory, being metalcore I should love anyway, I'd never delved into properly until hearing all those releases last year. Off the back of all of that, I've then become a fan and have started delving back. So for their strategy to try and pull someone new in, as an older band as well, it worked. And I know other people as well who now listen to them and have gone back to older songs because of that. So as a strategy with that, in releasing these multiple things throughout the year, here's a couple of singles and there's your 3-track EP. Now here's another couple, here's your 3-track. It was very easy and digestible to be able to delve into the band. And for me, it didn't matter about the payoff at the end, in particular, about, okay, then this makes your album at the end of the year in November, December. That didn't matter because at that point, I'm sold on the band. And it's getting me to go back and listen to other stuff. And it gets me to, they're playing Oxford later this year. We've got tickets to go to it. It's a different way of being able to be introduced to a band, whether they're new, whether they're old. That release schedule, for me, worked. And so being at the forefront in a different way compared to like Static Dress always being there live, being at the forefront of releases like this, they were constantly talked about like we did last year, and it worked. So I think it can work, and kind of like maybe tying it all up, like kind of our albums dying. Kinda. Perhaps there's like there is the vinyl resurgence that's coming through with it. But
yeah,
I think
I was going to raise that point as well. There does seem to be like a not quite a niche, but a group of people that are kind of seeing the value of physical music again and kind of getting into that side a bit more. And I think really it comes down to what the vibe of your band is and what the vibe of your fans is as well. Because if you're a band that like prefers to just make a full album then you're likely to have fans that prefer to listen to a full album, really. And the same if it's the other way around. If you prefer to put out EPs and singles all the time, then you're probably appealing to an audience that like playlisting and like just listening to singles more so than an album. Or if they do listen to an album, they're probably going to pick a few songs out they like, and then those are the ones they'll revisit. Like for example, the Wonder Years. The Wonder Years.
I had that in my head.
Like, they're a much bigger band than their monthly Spotify listeners will suggest, and that's because they've said themselves they do quite well on vinyl. Their fans are like vinyl guys. They like collecting stuff. They like physical copies. Whereas you'll have other bands that are doing absolute bits on Spotify that won't sell that many physical albums. And I think it's just based on, like I said, what your band's like and what your fan base is like as to what their preference is.
And also, there have been instances as well where there are bands that like have insane Spotify numbers, and then live they do not draw a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Or
I know that's kind of
or
a
they'll
different-
draw a crowd for like the one or two songs that do really well on streaming for them. And then that crowd might, if they play one of those songs early on in their set, that crowd might just disperse and go somewhere else.
But as we've discussed ourselves anyway, that's possibly also a link to social media, which could be a
Oh,
whole
big
different
time,
discussion in itself.
Yeah.
Anyway, wrap up.
And I know that. Yeah, I know that the point of this isn't really to have an answer to the question.
I don't think there is.
I don't think
It's a
there is. I
discussion,
know that there
really.
is. But do you think that because things have changed so much in the last 5 years because of things like TikTok and Spotify, do you think that in 15, 20 years' time, we could be at a point where albums are literally a relic?
I don't think so. I think there'll be another evolution like the way streaming services is now. I couldn't
Yeah.
predict
Cassettes are
what
coming
it could
back,
be.
baby.
I think also
Cassettes are coming
Cassettes-
back.
I
I mean,
think
some of
it's
them are.
also genre specific
Specific,
because
Yeah.
if you're a pop artist, and no discredit to you, like you're gonna just want to churn out singles, because why would you? Unless you're like Taylor Swift or Olivia Rodrigo, where people are rabid enough to listen to a full album. I don't think there are that many pop artists where people are going full album.
Mhm.
I might be wrong. Whereas I do think, I don't mean this to sound like in an arrogant way, but I think we're in a subculture of music where people are more willing to go for a full album. So I think within heavy and alternative music, it will always be there. But for pop artists, it might be a complete thing of the past and years to come. Interesting to ponder, though, isn't it?
That was a very good discussion, I thought.
Yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about albums. Do you still enjoy them? Are you a playlister? Do you think TikTok has rotted everyone's brain? The answer is yes. And before we go, should we recommend some new albums?
Well, yeah, speaking of
albums,
I am going to recommend an oldie but a goldie that's been re-released. Green Day have done a 30th anniversary edition of Ducky. In specific terms, I want to just say about Disc 2. You're hearing 4-track demos, old other demos of these songs, cassette demos, I think it is. It's amazing to hear how these iconic songs started and then changed throughout the years. In particular, I would say listen to the 4 tracks of When I Come Around and Basket Case, because the When I Come Around is amazing to hear the transition of what it becomes. Basket Case is a wildly different song than how it finished. So check out disc 2 of Ducky 30th anniversary.
I'm going to let Alex go next because I've got a dilemma.
I'm going to recommend a bit of a curveball. It's not that bit much of a curveball. I never really got around to listening to Turnover's latest album. I've got a pair of ears. I'm a fan of Peripheral Vision. I'm not an idiot. And I really...
That was so Brent.
Sorry.
If Brent was emo.
If Brent was emo... Look, if you're an emo, everyone loves Peripheral Vision. I also really enjoyed Good Nature, and I like All Together. But I didn't listen to the latest one, which was last year as I'm looking at it. Can you believe that?
Can you believe there was a limited Dinked edition on vinyl?
Was there? This guy knows. Always selling. It's Myself in the Way by Turnover, last year's album. I never got around to it. So That was a Nacho Libre quote. Haven't got around to it. All
Okay.
right. So yeah, that.
I don't think James is gonna like it. But I've got two in mind. I think I want Alex to pick which one I'll go for. We can go for one that I think James is gonna love, and one that could be a bit more interesting. I don't think he'll hate it, but one that I'd be intrigued to hear his thoughts on.
I'm so interested.
So basically, a guaranteed James is like, hell yeah, I love this, and one that could be a shock or not so
Okay.
much of a shock.
Go on then.
I'll pick whichever one you don't pick. I'll just pick next month.
Okay, all right. I'm torn because I've already given him a struggle by recommending
true.
that Turnover album.
Shall we go easy on him?
So maybe if we go easy on him this time, and then
next
give him a
time,
curveball next
yeah,
time, because that'll
okay.
be like to wrap up the year.
Nice.
Maybe.
I'm going to go for a recent release that we haven't covered on the podcast. It's Svalbard's The Weight of the Mask.
Oh.
Their last album they released in 2020 was fucking excellent. It was near the top of a lot of people's album of the year lists, and I have a feeling that this one might be as well. And I think James will love it.
Bit of you.
I've never listened to him.
Bit of you.
Ever listened to him.
Excellent band.
I could not name you a song, so...
Bit of you.
They're a bit proggy. They've got a bit of a Death Heaven vibe.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So yeah,
Now I want to recommend
excited.
that Death Heaven.
I'm going to listen to it on the way home.
Okay.
Death Heaven album or that one?
This one.
Nice.
Maybe Death Heaven when I get home.
Well, that was episode 34. Thank you for
I'm now.
listening.
I'm trying, because last time we said the Larry Bird episode. I'm now trying to stop myself from
saying it's the
just
Paul Pierce
saying a different
episode.
basketball player.
Every episode now.
Yeah. But this
That's two
was this was
Celtics in a row. We can take that.
this was the Paul Pierce episode.
This was.
Is there a racer that wears 34?
34. I don't think there is. No.
Shame.
Never mind.
The Paul Pierce episode.
The Paul Pierce
Can't
episode.
think of a football that wears 34 either, off the top of my head.
Weird number.
It's not a number, yeah. Well, it's not as an even number.
For fuck's sake. Anyway, thank you for getting this far at least.
Just
like-
accidental Brent all the time.
Christ. Like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Let us know your thoughts on the discussion. Our album's dying out. Talk to us. We love to see discussion happening between yourselves. Just hearing all your opinions, because it makes it fun for all of us. Trying to think what we've got coming up next month. We've got Straight from the Path.
Yeah, we do.
I'm at Holding Absence.
We've just recorded another episode of A Perfect Gig with Jesse from Dream State,
That was wonderful.
Great episode.
which will probably be out pretty soon.
So check that out for sure. And like we said, we kind of had Misery's Company. We mentioned. Go back and watch that vlog, and at that point, just go and watch all the
Yeah,
festival
you might as well
season.
just recap festival
Just watch
season.
it all. There'll be a lovely playlist in there that I'm telling Alex now to make. That's going to have all of festival season on there.
Cheers.
Go back to it. Take down, slam dunk, download, trees, burn it down, burn Misery Loves Company. I think that's all of them. I hope I haven't forgotten any. I think that's
The
it.
cold nights are drawing in. Go back and reminisce on some good warmer time. Well, it wasn't even that much warmer, was it, this summer? But
It
Yeah?
fucking was at download.
oh, download, yeah.
You had to
but
waterboard Alex.
it was wet everywhere
I was
else.
waterboarded, and I'm sure I passed out from heat stroke while who was playing? Soul Glow. Fell asleep at download during Soul Glow's set. Pure heat stroke. But
Go and see it in the vlog. It was good fun.
it was good fun.
Like, subscribe, comment, all the usual stuff. A lot of good things coming your way. Some new special things coming as well. So stay excited. Stay tuned.
Ta-ra.
Stay metal.